Hello, Sunday. Let's start with sex. And a chap called Stuart Brodie, who is a psychology professor at the University of Western Scotland, who claims that you can discern a woman's ability to achieve orgasm just by looking at her lips. His paper names the plump spot below your Cupid's bow, called the tubercle, as the best indicator of sexual satisfaction. So if you have thin lips, don't despair. While full lips are commonly associated with sexual prowess, Brodie says to focus on that small bump instead of overall lip shape. And you can see it clearly hanging down there in the photograph. He doesn't stop there. He goes on to do other research, on this occasion with Nicholas, Suter and Carufel, where we read the abstract introduction. Research has demonstrated the association between vaginal orgasm and better mental health. Some theories of psychotherapy assert a link between muscle blocks and disturbances of both character and sexual function. If functional sexological therapy, one focus of treatment is amelioration of voluntary movement. The present study examines the association of general everyday body movement with history of vaginal orgasm. The objective was to determine if appropriately trained sexologists could infer a woman's history of vaginal orgasm from observing only their gait. That's the way they walk. Methods: women, with known histories of either vaginal orgasm or vaginal anorgasmia were videotaped walking on the street, and their orgasmic status was judged by sexologists blind to their history. The main outcome and measure: the concordance between having had orgasms triggered by penile vaginal intercourse, not orgasm direct from clitoral stimulation, and Rater's inference of vaginal orgasm history based on observation of the woman's walk was the main outcome measure. Results: in the sample of healthy young Belgian women, half of whom were vaginally orgasmic, history of vaginal orgasm, triggered solely by penile vaginal intercourse, was diagnosable at far better than chance level by appropriately trained sexologists. Clitoral orgasm history was unrelated to both ratings and to vaginal orgasm history. Exploratory analysis suggests greater pelvic and vertebral rotation and stride length might be characteristic of the gait of women who have experienced vaginal orgasm. Conclusions: the discerning observer may infer a woman's experience of vaginal orgasm from a gait that compromises fluidity, energy, sensuality, freedom, and absence of both flaccid and locked muscles. Results are discussed with regard to previous research on gait, the effect on musculature of sexual function, the special nature of vaginal orgasm, and implications for sexual therapy. We could branch out into this and do some further studies, could we not? Moving on to Easter Island, where I'm sure we all know the Easter Island heads, and this is a chap standing on an Easter Island head. I know it won't come up too well, but in 3B we now go below the head, and we see the Easter Island bodies. This chap's still standing on the head, but 2-3 layers below there always was bodies and carving down below the heads. It's open there, Kitty, you can go through. Interesting. Link to read more about the excavations there. So let's finish with a bit of economy where it's safer. Whose economy has it worse? This is an interesting article by Ian Bremmer, who we know, and Nouriel Roubini, who we know. And you can actually see, reading it, who's actually grabbed the typewriter to do the writing. Just to give us a kick-off, I'll read the opening paragraph. It's no wonder that global markets are so jittery. The world's 3 largest economies can't continue along their current paths, and everyone knows it. Investors watch nervously for signs that China is headed towards a hard landing, and that America will sink back into recession, and that the Eurozone will simply implode. So the interesting thing here is that they've carved the world up into 3 places: China, America, and the Eurozone, the 3 biggest economic blocks. With China, we can stick bits of Asia in there as well. But just to simplify things, we've got the big 3 and the rest. Now, it's an interesting article that I've put up because I've kind of could agree with for a couple of reasons. This chart gives us one of the indications of one of the reasons. Who will have young workers, and you can see this is a projection forward in time from now, going up to 2050. And China's working age population declines quite a lot, obviously, with their one-child policy. And in Europe, it's a terrible big drop-off of workers. And in Europe, the extra problem of supporting the old. In China, they're quite happy to let the families support the old, should we say. Let them die. So we can appreciate that Europe, for many reasons, is going to implode one day, because it simply, unless something miraculous happens, will not be able to support the load of their old. The new young workers will not be dynamic enough to support the old. It just cannot happen without a miracle of some sort. You could even notice in the way China refused to pay for the EFSF, or at least back the EFSF. They said, look, we work very hard where we are, very hard indeed, and we don't have social backup like you do. We don't pay people to stay at home and watch television. So we're not going to pay for your people to stay at home and watch television. And that kind of gives us a hint of staying at home and being paid to watch television has worked up to now, because there has been enough faith that Europe can't implode, because it's always been the greatest. But all these old ideas are being pricked one by one, lots and lots of little pops, and they're all disappearing. These old beliefs that just because it worked in the past, it should work in the future. Now people are actually doing the mathematics of it all and seeing, well, actually it is utterly impossible that it's going to work in the future. But we go to the United States, and for a couple of reasons, this we see, I'm a bit dubious on how they get to the young workers increasing by 37% as opposed to the declines in China and Europe. But if we take it at face value, we can see at least mathematically the United States has got a chance. And in the short to medium term, I've always believed that the United States has got more of a chance because of the human mind. And when it comes down to it, if you've got something, a pile of money, a wedge that you believe that you want to keep invested somewhere and it might come back in the future, where are you going to put it? My belief has always been, because it's my personal belief, that more people will invest in the United States because I would. They will do the same calculations that I would. That if you're going to put your money anywhere, where are you going to put it? And you can either go straight to the top and say the United States, or you can go to the bottom and start crossing people off until you get to Europe, China, and for various reasons cross Europe and China off. And the money has to go to the United States. In other words, I would never bet against the big boy. Never. And I think that's the way the world will go. But the big question is how the big boy will stand up with the implosion of Europe and the hard landing of China. How much is the big boy going to be affected by this? And we've got to say the big boy is going to be greatly affected by this, but will be able to withstand it better in the short, medium and long term than the rest of the world. That's my just open, plain belief on it, for many reasons. One there being that the population is demographically in better condition, and there just is more space and more resources ready to be used in the United States than there is or are in other areas. I'm still not going to bet against the United States. How about you?